Hey y'all, meteorologist Sydney Goldberg here from the First Alert Desk on this Wednesday, and all eyes are still on the weekend as we watch for the potential for a significant winter storm to take place across the deep south, beginning early as Friday and into the weekend. So the National Weather Service has already posted winter storm watches for places of the southern plains, extending from New Mexico, a big swath of Texas, Oklahoma, Arklatex region, and extending further eastward into Kentucky and even the northern portions of Alabama and Mississippi. So that starts Friday and carries into early Sunday morning. So let's talk about the setup with this storm. In the upper levels of the atmosphere, you can see here we have these big isobars, which is really just showing pressure in different heights. But what I want to show you is these colors here. These are near freezing or below freezing temperatures. So right now, they're confined mainly up into the poles, to the Arctic. But as we continue through the days ahead, these below freezing temperatures are going to continue to sink down towards the south. So here's Friday afternoon, below freezing temperatures reaching as far south as northern Louisiana, portions of Mississippi and Alabama. Now also notice, I have the upper air pattern on top of this here to show you the setup on how we're going to get a pretty significant winter storm developing across the deep south. Already, we have the freezing temperatures in place, right? They continue to sink down towards the south, but also off towards the west. You can kind of make it out. There's a little bit of a dip in the jet stream here. That's going to send a storm system off the west over towards the east. So then we get the mixture of moisture with the below freezing temperatures. So now we know what the setup is, but how do we determine who gets what type of wintry precip and where? Well, yes, we want to talk about the below freezing temperatures, right? But we also have to look at the entire column of air, so the depth of the atmosphere, to determine what kind of precipitation we're going to get in terms of winter stuff. Well, rain actually falls from clouds in the cold air. So it's usually ice and snow, but then it falls through a warm layer and melts, and that's why we get rain at the surface. Freezing rain, very similar, starts as snow. We have a pretty deep warm layer that falls through and melts, but we have freezing or below freezing temperatures right at the surface. So this is the kind of stuff that falls as rain and then freezes on contact. This is the nasty stuff. We don't like this because it creates slippery ice, hazardous road conditions, and also it can pile up on things like tree branches, power lines, and it can cause significant damage. Sleet, on the other hand, similar, where it starts as snow, falls through a warm layer, but the freezing layer is larger, so it has time to reform into an ice particle, and that's what we see as sleet. And that sleet, when it hits the ground, it usually bounces off, so it's not piling up on power lines and tree branches like freezing rain. Then snow is, well, the entire depth of the column is below freezing, so it remains as ice as it falls all the way through down into the surface. So we're likely going to be dealing with all of those kinds of precipitation when it comes to this winter storm. Now, I want to show you the timing here. We're getting closer and closer to Friday and to the weekend, so we're starting to get close to our shorter range model. So that just means that we have a little bit of higher resolution. So this model I'm showing you is just one model, so take it with a grain of salt. Of course, there's going to be differences as we continue through the rest of the week, variations in the storm track, and also those temperatures. That's what's making this forecast very difficult to determine who gets what, when, and where, right? So I want to show you this. Here's Friday morning. We have low pressure off that upper level low that I was showing you. And remember, we've got the freezing temperatures sinking south. So this is Friday morning. We have low pressure off towards the west in Texas, a few showers starting to develop, but up towards the north in Arkansas, Oklahoma, we're starting to get the blue, which is snow, and also a mix here, this pink, which is most likely going to be freezing rain. So I have this paused on Friday evening. We're just dealing with some showers by Friday evening, but we're already starting to see those wintry precip conditions up towards the north of us. So we advance this to Saturday morning, and you'll notice this model has the frozen stuff entering portions of northern and central Louisiana, also up into Mississippi and Alabama, but it still has rain for us Saturday morning. So I think most of the day on Saturday, we're going to be dealing with rain. The question really lies, what about Saturday overnight into early Sunday? Are we going to have the moisture, and are we going to be cold enough to produce some sort of wintry precipitation all the way down here in South Louisiana? And that most likely would be freezing rain. So this model here is generating that mix, that ice into over a very late Saturday night into really early Sunday morning. So I have this paused at 5 a.m. But if you look here, here's Baton Rouge. The model is combining where it looks like rain and the possibility for freezing rain. So we're right on the edge. And to be honest, that's what a lot of models are showing. The Baton Rouge Metro Airport, or the Baton Rouge Metro area, really, right on the edge. But it is showing the possibility for some freezing rain or ice, mainly for areas north of the Baton Rouge Interstate. And we're starting to see that inconsistency between a lot of different model runs and also across different models in general. So that's what we're seeing here on Sunday morning. If I advance this, if it'll go, there we go. Now let's talk about the significant impacts that we're going to see with this winter storm. Well, unfortunately, if you're hoping for snow, we're not going to be dealing with snow here in South Louisiana, but possibly all the way up into central and northern Louisiana could get around an inch of snow. But big snow totals, heavy snows expected up towards the north, really from Oklahoma, parts of Arkansas, Nashville, this is Tennessee, about 5 inches of snow, northward into Kentucky, West Virginia, off towards the East Coast. So we're not going to be dealing with the snow, but I'll tell you what, this winter storm is going to produce some significant snow totals for our friends up towards the north of us, beginning by Friday and into the weekend as well. What we're mostly concerned about is ice. Ice is going to be a big problem with this winter storm. You can see it's a big swath of pink here showing this is freezing rain accumulations from the national blended models. And if you notice, you can kind of make it out, this darker shade of pink, this magenta, that's where the models are hinting at expecting the biggest amount of accumulating ice, so ice freezing rain. And that's mainly along I-20 corridor here and off towards the east as well and parts of the Carolinas. So if we zoom in closer to our part of the world, well, it is showing a shade of pink, but it's significantly dropping off. Really where it stops is that I-10 corridor. So, and if you looked at the model earlier, where we're kind of showing that mix of rain and also freezing rain, it's right around that line. Very close. So it's going to be very close to figure out, one, are we going to get cold enough? Two, are we going to have the moisture? So that's why this forecast is particularly tricky. All right, let's add some numbers to that. This is the same model, freezing rain totals. And again, it is starting to show some accumulations close to Baton Rouge, but really mainly to the north. So Macomb, a little over 1/10 of an inch, but this is a big change. I'll tell you what, compared to the last NBM model run, and last night Dr. Steve was showing totals near Macomb closer to 1/4 of an inch. So it's starting to back off because we're starting to see model runs taking the track of the system a little bit up towards the north. So if there's a more northern track, then we're going to back off a little bit on these potential freezing rain totals. But the story is we could see some ice accumulations, some freezing rain accumulations as far south as I-10 really, but mainly off towards the west and to the north of us. So we could see that potential in southern Mississippi and maybe parts of the Felicianas and Florida parishes. So here's another way to look at it. This is 3 model comparisons, Barron 3K, 15K, and GFS. You've probably heard us talk a lot about the GFS, that's the American model. These are 2 other models within the Barron system. And what these lines are showing is freezing rain accumulations, so the same thing I was just showing you, but 1/10 of an inch or greater. And you'll notice we're starting to see a lot of agreement here between the 3 models. And so what that's telling me is that likely we could see some freezing rain accumulations. I mean, it's really just right on the edge of Baton Rouge. It's going to depend on how cold we get, and I'll talk about that in a second. But more likely north of Baton Rouge of the interstates and also off towards the west. When we see model consistency like that, it starts to breed confidence. Consistency and models breeds confidence. So this is a good way to look at probability of where we could see freezing rain and ice accumulations, mainly overnight, again, Saturday into early Sunday. So let's talk about temperatures. Well, here's the blend again in terms of forecast temperatures going into Saturday and Sunday. So I had this pause Saturday morning into the 50s, but notice already into central Louisiana starting to see some 30s and low 40s. If we advance this, here we go, Sunday around midnight, 48 here in Baton Rouge, 43 up in Macomb. Look at where the coldest air is, still off towards the west. Starting to see some freezing temperatures in Oakdale, close to at Fort Polk at 29. Again, this is at midnight. We advance this again. Here we go, Sunday morning. So what I showed you in the models, on the 3K in particular, remember it was kind of keeping that wintry mix into really early Sunday morning? Well, that means we have to reach freezing temperatures for that to occur. Right at the surface, we need it to be freezing or below for the rain to freeze, right? Freezing rain on contact. But the NBM isn't really showing temperatures reaching below freezing near Baton Rouge and southward overnight. I have this positive at Sunday morning. It's still keeping the freezing temperatures really off towards the west. Starting to see some 20s in central Louisiana, 32 in Lake Charles. So it's really going to depend on whether or not we get cold enough to see how far south that freezing rain potential goes. But I will tell you this. I know the talk is about will we get ice, will we get freezing rain? Well, as we get past Sunday, Sunday is going to be very cold because once that winter storm progresses eastward, we get Arctic air that's going to filter in. So Sunday is going to be very cold. It's possible we don't even get out of the 30s through the afternoon. So I have this paused at 3 p.m., which is typically where our afternoon high is. And if there's any likely, there's going to be ice on the ground to the north of us, snow. All of that air is moving over the snow and ice that's on the ground. That's going to cool the air mass off even more. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is even colder than the upper 30s. So Sunday is going to be very, very cold. Then going into early next week, this is Sunday evening, look, just above freezing here in Baton Rouge, 34, 30 in New Road, starting to see some 20s by Sunday evening. So as we continue, we're looking at the potential for hard freezes into early next week. I mean, this is the blended models by Sunday or by Monday morning. Widespread 20s, even some teens popping up on the map. So very, very, very cold as we go into early next week. So we're likely going to see potential for hard freezes. So that means today, tomorrow, Friday, I know we will have to be dodging some showers. We'll talk about that in a second. But if you have exposed pipes and you haven't wrapped those yet so far this season, today and the upcoming days are really going to be the best days to go ahead and do that because confidence is increasing that we're going to see some very cold temperatures after this winter storm moves through. Whether or not we see freezing rain or just some cold rain, we will see very cold temperatures going into early next week. All right, now let's talk about what we're dealing with today. Clouds to start off this morning is a little bit gloomy. Big difference to start off this morning. It was much warmer, more mild to start off compared to the past couple of mornings. And that's because those clouds really moved in overnight and the winds started to turn out of the south. So that led to moderating temperatures overnight. So today is going to be warmer and you'll certainly feel it. We're already in the low 60s right now, 63 in Baton Rouge, but starting to see some upper 60s popping up on the map now. 69 in Patterson, 68 in Gonzales, 69 over in New Orleans as well. Quite the difference compared to this time yesterday. I mean, on the map running anywhere from 5 to 10 degrees warmer across South Louisiana. So warming trend taking place today, and that's really going to continue through the rest of the work week before we start to get that next Arctic breakout dropping down towards the south. So I've got us climbing into the upper 60s. Then by the afternoon, and especially into the evening, we'll have to watch for some scattered showers. Now it'll be light to moderate rain, but you may have to be dodging some showers into the evening. Off and on showers continue into the after dark hours and overnight as well. Live look at our satellite and radar. Here's the rain up towards the north and west of us, but you can see it's traveling southward and also to the east. So that's going to impact us later today. I'll show you that on the modeling here. By lunchtime, it'll start to sink southward, so we could see a few showers in the area approaching and then becoming more widespread really through the late afternoon and early evening. So here's 3 p.m. A few light showers, maybe some moderate rain in there, but not going to be any kind of thunderstorms or anything like that. Then we continue into the evening, off and on scattered showers, and then into the after dark hours as well. So late evening, we could get another round of some shower activity. Again, nothing crazy, just going to be wet compared to the past couple of days, right? Then we'll trend drier overnight, but I wouldn't rule out that we'll see some isolated showers still lingering into the early morning hours on Thursday. So I've got rain chances at 50% today, so scattered off and on rains. Then I keep the moisture right on through the rest of the work week. So I've got 40% on Thursday and on Friday, and then yes, quite the jump into the weekend as we await for developing winter storm across much of the deep south this weekend. So quite the roller coaster. By the end of the week, you were talking about mild temperatures, 72 by Thursday, upper 60s again by Friday, dealing with the rain. Then we are giving you that first alert for the potential for freezing rain with that winter storm that we're tracking. Now, as we get closer, we'll really be able to fine tune those details, because now we're starting to get into our short-term models and we'll be able to get a better understanding of what the temperature is going to be. Is there going to be moisture matching up with those freezing temperatures over the weekend? So after the weekend, well, yeah, I know we're talking about whether or not there's going to be the chance for some wintry precip, but on a more serious note, next week is going to be very, very cold. We're looking at significant freezing temperatures overnight into the 20s, so hard freeze to start next week. So go ahead and wrap any exposed pipes. Get that done today, Thursday and Friday, ahead of the cold that's coming this weekend and into next week. So as we get closer to the weekend, we will continue to update you. If you don't already have it, download our WFB First Alert Weather app. We'll send you push notifications as we get new information. We'll go live if you would like the latest update on our First Alert Weather app. And that is the best way to get the ever-evolving forecast, as we do by manually update those numbers in there. All right, Jeff Morrow will have the latest on what to expect with the rain today and the upcoming days, and of course, the latest information and details as we get into the weekend with this developing winter storm in the deep south.
Southern Air of Baton Rouge says no, 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 no interest, no money down, no payments for 12 months on HVAC, plumbing, and electrical services. Scan the QR code on your screen to learn more.
I'm Lawyer Locke Meredith. If you're battling an insurance company because of a wreck not your fault and they're not calling you back or being fair, whether you hire us at all, give us a call, 272-5555, or email Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates. You have nothing to lose.